Hi everyone. Okay, so recently a student in one of my MFA classes raised what I think is a really important question. And it's a question that I think just about every writer who wishes to have their work out there in the hands of readers via publication thinks about at some point or another. And I can tell you many writers, and at one point myself included, really sort of dreaded this aspect of publication. So the student basically wanted to know, is it required if I become a traditionally published author, will I basically be required to make public appearances? Many of us know that survey that was apparently done that showed that many or most people actually placed the fear of public speaking above the fear of death. So literally saying that people would rather die than get in front of a group of people and speak publicly. It is a well-known human concern. So I thought this was an important question as someone myself who was a young aspiring author. I was a writer, but I aspired to be an author during a time when the publisher book tour was still a thing. And I'm so grateful for that time because it meant that I, as a 20-something, starting in my 20s and really continuing until it seemed to no longer really be a thing, and also continuing until I no longer lived in an area where these readings were so accessible. I grew up in a time and a place, the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, where public readings were very common and they were very close by. About 10 minutes from where I lived, I was able to see so many wonderful authors. Zadie Smith, Isabel Allende, Chitra Divakaruni, Jean Shinoda Bolen. I mean, it was just sort of this endless stream of sort of my author heroes coming through basically in my neighborhood. And I would just have to show up. Most of these events were free. It was wonderful. And it was very, very clear. And these are, of course, very big names in publishing, right? But it was very clear that the publishers had sent these authors on tour. There was a whole press release, there were materials, they were supported in their travel, they were supported in their appearances. And that was really, really fantastic. And I do think that probably back in the day, it was maybe more of an expectation, especially if you had a breakout book, you had a big title that really did well, and it was a big splashy release, that part of that expectation was going on tour, making public appearances, and the cross-country tour was not at all unusual. These days, though, and this will, I think, frustrate some writers and be welcome news for others who might not be aware of this, I really don't think there is any such requirement. Not that there was ever a requirement, really, but it was very common. These days, I don't really think it's even that common for authors to go on tour. And if they do go on tour, it's often self-funded, or maybe they have a little bit of support from the publisher. Maybe the publisher does a little outreach or tweets something out or posts something on the publisher website. But really, more often than not, I think these are, by and large, for the most part, of course, there are always going to be exceptions, by and large, author funded. I do think what is really lovely to do, if you have a great fear of public speaking, but you can manage to get yourself in front of a camera and speak via video or do podcast interviews where it's not even video, it's just audio, I think that can be really wonderful because not only is it pushing your envelope in a way that may feel a little bit safer than a truly public appearance. You know, you show up at a bookstore and let's say, hopefully there's a crowd there to see you, and that can really bring up a lot of nerves. But it can feel a little safer to be, say, in the comfort of your own home, doing a video or doing a podcast interview. I think it's a wonderful way to A, push your envelope a little bit, your comfort envelope, and B, to really connect with readers who potentially would never have heard of you or your book otherwise. I talked about in my last video, discoverability is difficult. It's a big pressing issue for authors these days. I think it's a pressing issue for authors, whether you're traditionally published, hybrid, indie, self, whatever, however you've chosen to go with your method of publication. Discoverability is huge. So anything you can do mostly comfortably, maybe there's a little discomfort there, but if you know it's a way to reach readers who otherwise just in the sheer numbers of books and information facing them every day maybe would never have seen your book, I think it's a really, really good idea to learn to do that. And one of the lovely things about video podcasting is you can practice endlessly. You can try it, delete until you get something you like. Now, in an interview situation, you can't do that so easily, but if you've done a little practice beforehand, that's something you can really improve upon. Right. And I have found doing podcast interviews in the past, they're really fun. And if you have a good host, if you've listened to a few episodes and you know that this host they're on their game, they know what questions to ask, they know how to keep it kind of natural and interesting, that can be a great help as well. So again, I don't think it's a requirement. Anyone who truly has a terror of public speaking, you definitely can be that author who is just known by the books. You don't have to be out there schlepping your wares around to bookstores and standing up in front of crowds of people. Although again, I think it's valuable to push ourselves a little and learn to do that. When opportunities do arise, and I've had this happen in the past at book conventions, book festivals, American Library Association convention in Chicago. I've been sort of several different cities around the country. When that opportunity arises and you can sort of put on your courage and go for it, it can be really, really exciting. It can really end up being a high point, I think, of an author's career in many ways, because then you get to talk to, again, face-to-face readers who want to talk to you, want to hear from you. But again, if you never encounter an actual in-person public event, you have no interest in that, that's okay. There are so many different ways to go about it. So I hope that maybe gives you some ideas, maybe allays some fears and anxieties if you've had those. I mean, it's definitely not a requirement. And at the same time, if you can find a way to let potential new readers and already existing fans, maybe there are just a few of those that you start with, if you can take some opportunity, find some way to let them hear from you, I think that's a really lovely thing to do. Your voice is important. And I can tell you as a reader, whenever I see interviews with my favorite authors, I just saw a recent one with Lori Moore, who was one that I just loved back in the day. I still love her work, and I never did see her read live. I would have been fangirling to a ridiculous extent. But I just saw a newish interview with her, and I thought, that's awesome. I just love her. And it's just so neat to connect the work to the human who created the work. So keep that in mind. Let me know what you think about doing public appearances. If it's something you enjoy and you kind of thrive on that face-to-face interaction with readers and other writers, or if it's something where you think, oh, if I never have to do a public appearance, that will be fine with me. Let me know. All right. See you guys soon.